Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Talk Nutrition Podcast. Today's episode 184 on tracking macros versus intuitive eating. I want to break down whether you have to track or not, what's going to lead to probably the best results. I'll say right away why intuitive eating is a great idea, but probably mostly for your maintenance, right? So once you've already achieved fat loss, muscle gain, etc., and you then go to that long-term maintenance, granted, if you're not planning on any cuts or further, bulks or whatever, it's a great place to be. And I will share this too, because we're big on tracking, but every single client of mine, as we hit maintenance again, after fat loss and those kind of things, right? When we hit that phase, we're going to go back to not tracking, or at least we're going to play around with it because, hey, maybe they really like tracking. Personally, I do it all the time. Other than, let's say in the middle of my maintenance phase, right? At some point, I'm like, okay, good. Like I'm eating similar meals. I'm pretty good, with the, in quotes, intuitive side of things. And that's because of tracking, right? And that's what I want you to think about. Intuitive eating is a great idea. And I'll explain a bit more for those who don't know what it is in a sec. But I think we need to almost earn that skill. We need to train, right? If at this moment, right, we're maybe overweight or maybe we're not seeing the muscle gain results that we want, then there's some type of, like we're lacking some kind of knowledge or skills or whatever it may be, or experience maybe. Usually a combination of all, right? Maybe we can't fully trust our current hunger satiety signals too well. And maybe we need to use a tool like tracking to get results, to relearn portion control, to even just learn about nutrition, like what's in this food, right? And then eventually step away from it. Because I want you to see tracking as a tool that we can use to get you to a really good place, get you the best results in my opinion. But then also, right, the goal here, again, like I said with my clients, I could put them back at maintenance and we step away from tracking. I want you to do the same thing if you choose to go the tracking route. Because is it really possible to create results without tracking? Yes, it is. But it's going to be really hard to achieve optimal results. It's going to be very difficult to keep things objective. And typically speaking, we're not great at subjective decisions, right? Or at least I'll say this, like we mostly make subjective decisions based on feelings. And that's not bad per se, but throughout your journey, it's going to be good to have some objectivity every now and then. Now, a coach can help you with that. You can use your tracking app. You can use a friend, anyone who can be on your team on this journey. But we need some objectivity. Because let's say you don't track. From the get-go, you don't know how many calories you currently consume. Not that it's all about calories, but it's just a great measure, right? Because that's how your body, right? You burn calories. That's how we measure the energy that you expend and consume. It's just a measure. That's all, right? And if we don't really know where that is, and we don't know where those calories are coming from, specifically speaking, your macronutrients, or if you drink alcohol, right? How much is it coming from alcohol? That's a different conversation. But if we don't know from the get-go what that is, I'll say this too, right? It's going to be difficult to even just know, hey, are you eating enough protein? What about carbs and fats? Are you actually getting enough fats for your hormones? Are you getting enough carbs for your training, right? Do you recover well? We can look at biofeedback, meaning, right, energy levels, hunger, and those kind of things. But without tracking, it becomes even more difficult. Because here's the thing. Let's say you don't track. There's a few things you can do. You can go with like a hand portion method to where you can kind of figure out, there's different tools for this, how many thumb-sized portions or servings of healthy fats you need, like how many palm-sized portions you need for your proteins, how many, what's the other one? For fruits and veggies, it's fists, right? So how many fists of fruits and veggies do you need? And I like to call those color, right? I kind of group them in one. And how many like cupped handfuls of carbohydrate you would need. So that's one way. You can also go with the plate method, right? Where we typically say at least a quarter of your plate, maybe even a third of your plate could be protein. Just about, I don't know, like another quarter or like a third would be carbohydrate. And then just about the same maybe, or maybe a little bit more, kind of depending on your phase, color, so fruits and or veggies. And then you would add some healthy fats to that, typically 1 or 2 thumb-sized portions of healthy fats per meal. But even then, you're still going to need some type of structure because we need to be able to measure things, body weight, measurements, etc., to even see how this is actually affecting you. And then with that data, I also want you to pay attention to biofeedback. Stress levels, energy levels, sleep, how is that going? What else? Just keeping track of digestion, right? Your recovery, how well are you performing? Could be at the gym, could be, cognitively, right? Like how well are you performing difficult tasks? Maybe even in bed, right? Because we need that data to really see, again, objectively, where are we currently at. So even without tracking macros or tracking calories, whatever you want to call it, tracking your food, and we use Cronometer for that, even without that, I would still suggest using data, but just different types of data, or at least everything else, so that you at least have an idea of where you are at. Because we could simplify this and we could say, okay, cool. So we start with a general, I'm going to go with the plate method now, right? We're going to go with the plate method, and we're going to have 3 actual meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then we're going to come up with some type of snack or maybe a light meal, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to need, I still want to suggest sticking with a actual meal plan in that case, maybe, to where you can have a steady intake. Because here's the thing. You're not going to be able to base off of, one day of eating, like how you're going to respond. You know what I mean? This takes weeks. So with the plate method, with their structure, you'd still need to repeat a whole bunch of stuff to then see, okay, when I eat like this, my weight's trending up, down, or staying the same. My measurements are changing like this, and maybe you would, measure every 2 weeks or so. You pay attention to biofeedback. Okay, cool. So when you do that, if you do that, because most people will not, right? A lot of people will not give tracking a shot, but then also not even try the plate method and then actually stick with that method for at least a few weeks, even to give themselves a chance to look at biofeedback, look at measurements, etc. But okay, let's imagine you are actually super consistent there and you are following that. Now you could say, okay, based on my weight, I think I'm either maintenance, in a surplus, or in a deficit. Based on how I feel, let's say your recovery sucks, maybe you want to increase protein and or carbs. If your energy sucks in general, right? Maybe, or especially during your workouts, maybe we want to crank up the carbs. If we notice that after certain meals, we are quickly hungry again, let's add some more fats to slow digestion. Or look at how much color you're getting, fruits and veggies, maybe increase that, you see? So even without tracking macros, and this is at least what I would recommend, right? I would still look at all the other data points to keep things objective. Because again, if you're, especially at the very beginning of your journey, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And I always tell people, right? Because if you don't know yet, so intuitive eating is more like a approach where you, in quotes, follow your natural hunger and satiety cues. And I love the concept, but it was never designed to be a fat loss strategy, a muscle gain strategy, etc. And that's why I usually recommend that for maintenance. The idea is amazing, but to put it brutally honest, this might sting a little bit, but if I'm going to use myself as an example, right? I'll use myself as an example. When I was 110 kilos with very little muscle, and right, I was definitely overweight, like not like obese, but I was definitely heading in that direction. That was because I had been intuitive eating, right? That's because I wasn't paying attention. I was just eating based off of how I felt. That's how I ended up being overweight, because I was, in quotes, intuitively eating. And again, that's why I'm using myself as an example, right? Because I can imagine it might sting a little, because that really means that, hey, we just ended up here because we have been eating a certain way and we have been following our, again, natural hunger cues. So that being said, I do also want you to understand that we can rewire that. And that's why we are here. That's why we use tracking. Especially in the beginning, if a lot of people I've seen, when they come in and they're either under-eating protein, under-eating fruits and veggies, under-eating whole foods as a whole, and I put them at maintenance and they actually get to eat enough of the right foods, they often feel too full in the beginning. This doesn't go for everyone, but I've seen this plenty of times because a lot of people come in under-eating, whether it's under-eating in general or under-eating the right foods. And sometimes it's almost like, I don't love the word force feeding, but like we have to kind of push through it, you know what I mean? Because again, at the very beginning of your journey, you likely cannot trust your own hunger satiety cues. Now, guess what happens after a couple weeks of actually eating enough, the right foods, etc.? Now your body starts to adapt and things will return to baseline where they're supposed to be. So now all of a sudden, we don't feel overly full. Now all of a sudden, hunger might actually even pick up. You know what I mean? So again, like I said in the very beginning, I want you to think of, okay, the intuitive eating approach. It's a nice idea, but we're going to use tracking to get to that point, at least based on my suggestion, right? You're going to need some objectivity. You're going to need some structure, some way to toggle with your nutrition. And if we just base it off of what we feel like for the day, and right, there's no structure for how to put together your meals. You don't have a schedule for yourself when you're going to have your meals, how often that would be. Plus, you're not tracking your data. It's going to be very difficult. So let's say in the very beginning, not only can you likely not trust your natural hunger and satiety cues, you maybe also haven't built the right habits yet. And I think that's a big one too, because building habits takes a long time. Based on the research, it's 66 days on average, anywhere from 18 to 254 days, I believe it was. That's the range. And let's not get into like how long it's supposed to take, but let's take the average, 66 days. Cool. You cannot skip that part. Your brain literally needs to create new connections and then strengthen those connections for things to actually become a habit. It takes a long time. It takes many repetitions. So coming in thinking, hey, I'm going to come from my starting point. I'm going to go right to, the ultimate goal of intuitive eating, where I would eventually like to be. Again, you can't skip the habit building part. You can't skip the part of repetition after repetition after repetition for weeks, months on end, so that the things you do are actually part of who you are. So also that intuitive eating skill, also being able to make choices in the moment, also being able to, right? All that stuff you have to cultivate over time. And again, I can't say this enough, you cannot skip the habit building and you can't just straight go to intuitive eating. It's going to take some time. Same goes for flexible dieting, which we also preach, right? 80-20, 80% whole foods, 20% anything else. Also that I think you kind of need to earn. And let's, especially in the beginning, really get regimented, so to speak, with your nutrition. Kind of going back to what I was saying with the meal plan approach, if you go with the plate method, have something in place. Don't overcomplicate it. And people will always be like, I need more variety, etc. Cool. Yes, you can get more variety. But if right now you're already all over the place, let's not prioritize variety. Let's prioritize structure. Let's prioritize consistently getting enough of your macros with every meal. Let's prioritize getting enough fiber in. Let's prioritize getting the maintenance. And then let's say once you're already consistent, not before, right? Then let's say, cool, let's add variety, diversity. Let's make it more flexible. Because that's another thing too, right? Flexible dieting isn't just 80-20. It's also, hey, okay, so today with dinner, I'm going to have chicken for my proteins. And tomorrow, maybe for that same dinner, I want to change it up. I'm going to have steak instead. I'm going to have a plant-based option. I'm going to have some salmon, right? That's also part of the flexible dieting approach. But even there also, even being able to, again, intuitively make those little swaps, you need to build your skills, your habits, and it takes time to get to the point. Now, not just that, right? And it's pretty clear that I'm going to say, hey, let's track macros. Not just that. How are you going to be able to control your fat loss and muscle gain phases, and especially reverse diets? You need some type of data to make those decisions. Because what people don't know is there's a sweet spot for weight loss. That would be just about 0.5 up to 1% of weight loss per week. Sometimes you can push it a little faster. But, I like to aim for that, 1%. And if it's a bit slower, that's all great. You're not going to be able to do that without data, in my opinion. Same goes for muscle gain. People think, muscle gain, great, I can just eat whatever. No. So also there's a sweet spot. It's way slower though. It's between 0.25 and 0.5% per week. That's weight gain. If you go faster, and this is what people still do with the dirty bulks, with the, I'm just going to eat whatever, right? Are you going to build muscle that way? Yeah, sure. But the thing is, the more you go beyond that sweet spot range, right? The faster you gain weight, the more body fat you will accumulate over time. You're not going to build more muscle. excuse me, we're just going to build or gain more body fat. Just going to get some water. Now, reverse dieting. It's a big one too. Reverse dieting is a process of slowly adding calories, which you would do either if in the beginning you come just off of way too little calories and you want to go to maintenance for the first time, or you would do this after a fat loss phase. And how fast you increase calories is going to depend. Sometimes it's going to be, halfway between where you end your cut and your new expected maintenance. That will be your initial adjustment. And from there, maybe 50 calories. Maybe you add 100 calories. And I'm saying on a weekly basis. So you're going to take time because especially after weight loss, and we'll do another reverse dieting episode, but especially after weight loss, again, we can't fully trust our hunger satiety hormones. We're more likely to kind of give in, to get a little too loose. That's exactly where you need control. Because again, going back to subjective versus objective, if you keep things in check and we have those objective measures, you have a bigger chance, I should say, to make it through that process, to then eventually maintain. If you do it just based off of how you feel for the day, with all the daily stress and with sometimes bad nights of sleep and those kind of things, it's going to be very difficult and you're very likely to fail. There's a reason you see, I don't even love this data, but 95% of the diets fail. It's like, well, no, diets maybe don't necessarily fail because people lose weight. It's the weight loss maintenance. So with that weight loss maintenance, that's fucking almost everyone struggles with. Again, 95%, right? Has nothing to do with the actual diets in most cases. It has to do with the fact that people are never taught the exit strategy, aka controlling your way back up, to put it simple. Also there, we're going to use tracking, you see. Now, once you've learned from this, so, from the very beginning, you start tracking, you then relearn portion control. We first even just establish okay, now we actually know how much you need, because the calculation is great because, right, it gives us an idea where to go. But you're still going to have to go there because some people's maintenance are going to be higher or lower. So once we've gone there and we've taken you through whether it's muscle gain and fat loss or fat loss, whatever, we do a reverse diet back to maintenance. So let's say you want to chill in maintenance. Cool. Let's step away from tracking. I even push my clients too, who I can tell they're a little too attached to tracking, because that's my responsibility as a coach, right? It's my responsibility to push you, to challenge you. So if someone tells me that they're a little bit a little unsure about not tracking, I'm going to say, hey, next week, 1 or 2 days, no tracking at all. Don't even try to calculate it in your head. Just try. See how we do. And that's one of the ways we can make sure that we still do well without tracking. And we continue to push you, to challenge you in order to do good both with and without. Okay, a little analogy for you as well. Because I see tracking macros as like your guardrails or your, when you learn how to cycle, you learn how to ride a bike with those little side wheels, right? You didn't just jump on a race bike right away and just went. No, of course not. And if you did, you likely got hurt. You started with those little side wheels, and then maybe even additionally your parents would hold you, right? Just fully, or maybe like a hand behind you or something, just in case. And that's exactly what we're doing here. You start with the side wheels. You start with the extra support. Then once you've got some reps in, and you establish the new skill, whether it's riding a bike or, controlling your food intake, and you're now at a point like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, you know what? Let's actually try without. That's why I just use that example with my clients too. It's like, hey, cool. So we've tracked for a while. I can see that you're maybe a little too attached to tracking. AKA the kid might be like, I only want to cycle with the side wheels now. Now we're going to challenge you, right? Now we're going to say, cool, let's take them off. See how you do. Let's go 1 meter without the side wheels. 1 day without tracking, right? Let's go 2 meters, etc. And then as you go, you get better and better and better. Before you know it, you might be able to jump on that race bike. Going back to food, before you know it, you got your results. We can step away from tracking. Because now you can maintain your habits. We've learned from tracking, right? You have an idea of what foods in which proportions you want to see on your plate. Cool. Now you should be good to go. But then you can still go back to, and that's the nice thing here, we can always go back to it. but it's not supposed to be forever. It's just a tool. So what I want you to think about here, if you are currently not tracking your food, or maybe not consistently, consider doing it for like 6 to 12 months with breaks, right? Not all the time, every single day, every single meal, with breaks. Those should be planned for. Don't stop tracking in the middle of a fucking fat loss phase or in a reverse diet. No, of course not. You stop tracking when you're at maintenance. You stop tracking when you have a planned break, vacation. And in my case, like I would always recommend doing maintenance over vacations, no tracking, right? And think about it also like ahead of time when you are going to have those breaks and go in with another strategy. We'll do another podcast on this too. But like I said, if we were to base all of this on your hunger satiety hormones, especially at the start of your journey, you're likely to fail. We're not judging, right? We've all been there. I've been there myself. Like I said, when I was overweight, heading in the wrong direction, I simply couldn't trust my own habits. I simply couldn't trust basing my food intake on how I felt. Because there was a reason why I ended up overweight, right? And that's sometimes the hard part to fully accept. But it's also cool because if it means that I am in this current situation because of my personal lifestyle and behavior, as much as that might sting in some cases, that also means that I have the power to change that. That also means that if I change and work on my habits and lifestyle, I can reverse all of this and grow as a person. You see? So it's equally empowering. It's both confronting and empowering. So that being said, I hope that this all makes sense, right? When it comes to tracking and intuitive eating. And I'm not here to, fully break down intuitive eating and all the rules they have set up. And right, it's a big movement. And again, I like the idea. But in order to cycle, you're going to need those little side wheels first. You don't start on the race bike. That's the whole point here. Again, I know there's a lot of pushback. And I also want you to think of your experience with tracking, because I've talked to many people, they tried it for a day, they gave up. A week, they gave up. Maybe a month, they kind of half-assed it. That's not trying. If you do this every single day and you actually try to learn, you'll figure it out. I track my food at the moment every single day because I'm cutting. Everything I track goes into my Cronometer. Now, do I weigh everything? Currently, I don't, but I've also had years of experience with tracking, and I'm really good at eyeballing. There's nothing to brag about. It just is, right? So that being said, I know that I'm pretty good with this stuff, and I'm seeing progress still. I'm still losing fat, etc. My measurements, my weights, all dropping, and I've not been perfect. I've not tracked everything or weighed everything. I should say, I've tracked everything. I haven't weighed everything, but that's because of experience. So I want you to think too, especially in the beginning, try to fully just go all in and really give yourself a chance. And think about this too as a puzzle, a game that you can get more efficient at if you actually invest the time to just look into Cronometer and all the different functions you have. Because yes, I track everything. It also takes me 5 minutes a day. I barely open up my Cronometer. It literally takes me 5 minutes a day to track all my food. It's an investment worth making, you know what I mean? Like, time is not the thing. Well, in the beginning, it's going to take longer, I will say that. Because especially if you haven't used it before, it's going to make sense. That it's going to be a little... I'll tell you this. When I had Cronometer for the first time, I just came off of a different app, which was a slightly different approach. Still macro-based, but a little bit more simple. And I was, I really had to get used to it, you know what I mean? But guess what? I stuck with it, and in no time, it was such a quick process. And you can get to that point as well. So again, let me tell you this, if you can invest the 6 to 12 months, and I'm saying 6 to 12, right? I'm just saying what I've seen among clients, that's a really good time block to build solid habits, to get good with this stuff, to go through, right, at least one fat loss phase, if not two, with muscle gain and reverse diets in between, etc. If you give yourself the time, you actually invest the time and energy also to actually just mess around with the app. Don't expect yourself to be able to just kill it right away, right? And actually know exactly where to find everything. No, of course not. You're going to use it. You're going to be proactive. You're going to look into this. You know what? And maybe in the beginning it does take you half an hour a day. Cool. Well, look at your fucking social media use. So again, confronting, but right? I'm not kidding though. Knowing how much time people spend currently on social media on average, I'm not saying that that's you, but just in general, there's a lot of research on this too. I can almost guarantee you that almost every single person has 30 minutes in the beginning to track their food, to learn, and just not be on fucking TikTok all the time, or Instagram. And guess what? Sooner than later, that's going to be 20 minutes, 15, 10, maybe 5. If you use a lot of the copy and paste functions that Cronometer has. You can even set your foods to repeat, where literally all you got to do is, in the morning, it says like, hey, you have repeating items. Do you want to log them? You click, boom, 1 second, all your repeating foods are in there. I usually just click copy previous day. And then at the end of the week, right, on Sunday, so today's Sunday, I'll track my food for Monday. I decide what I want to eat. And then I'll just copy previous day. Usually I make some tweaks here and there. Sometimes I'll remove a couple meals or whole days even when I just want to change it up. But again, like the more structured you can be in the beginning, the more regimented, kind of going back to, what I was saying with the meal plan, the easier you can make it for yourself. The same thing goes for tracking. Like when you just get started, like don't think too much like, hey, I need to change it up all the time. No, you don't need to. I will always say, I'll tell all my clients this, food diversity is super, super key. I need you to have variety. I need you to have different colors for your fruits and vegetables. I want you to have different proteins, different carbs, different fats. Change it up. Maybe weekly, monthly, whatever you want to do, right? Whatever works for you. But in the very beginning, you don't need to change things up daily. You're just making it too difficult for yourself. Because again, if you just, at the beginning of your journey, whether you track or not, right? You just decide, let's say at least, 75% of your meals ahead of time is going to make it so much easier. And tracking, again, like I said, in the beginning, it might take you 30 minutes. It'll become 5 or 10 minutes in no time. There's a learning curve, but you'll get there. You know what I mean? So I hope that gave you a little more insight, not necessarily into intuitive eating, but understanding that it's something we can work towards. Because again, once we've gone through this process and you're confident that you've learned from tracking and you've played around with it, and now you're at maintenance and you're going to say, cool, you know what? I'm going to not track my food today. Upcoming week, I'm not going to track my food for 3 days. And then you're going to take it from there and see how you do. And then just how you got into tracking, maybe you have to get used to not tracking afterwards. That's not a bad thing either. We're just growing. That's a big one too, because that's an argument people will use. They say like it becomes too obsessive and, you get too attached to tracking. Yeah, if you fucking allow yourself to get to that point, absolutely. But what if we just plan for breaks and we actually step away from tracking at maintenance? Is it still obsessive then? Or are you just trying to use a tool for your benefit and then step away from it when you're good to go? You see? So I think we shouldn't put these apps and stuff like up here on this crazy, pedestal where it's like the scary big thing. No, it's a tool. You can use it to your advantage. But you can also, use it to hurt yourself in many ways. Just how, people with a gambling issue, right? They probably do that a little too much. And we could use more examples here, but you know what I mean? People with financial issues. It's not because of the bank app. It's their habits or their lifestyle, you know what I mean? Same with gambling, same with everything else. Drugs, whatever, We can keep using these examples, but you get the point. Now, I'm going to say too that with tracking macros, it's not that serious, you know what I mean? Unless you allow it to get to that point where it does go too far. And that's why as a coach, I always pay attention to this. And when I catch it, I'll tell people to literally not track. And guess what? Usually in the beginning, it's I'm not sure. And especially because of that reaction, I'm like, we're going to not track for a couple of days. And then 9 out of 10 times, you're totally cool with it. You see? So try tracking. Understand that it's a tool to get to that intuitive eating, whether you want to call it intuitive eating or not, right? I would just call it your ability to rely on your healthy habits. That's really all it is. From having gone through this process and from actually now knowing for sure that we're at maintenance and we are eating the right foods. And then just sticking with your routines, having your variety over time, right? And also trusting yourself in this process to maybe where you're currently at, like you cannot do this yet. And that's fine. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal. You can get to that point, but it's going to take some work. And this is just one of the tools you can use to make that work more effective and maybe even faster. So I want to thank you again for listening to this podcast. Of course, if you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with your friends. Drop us a quick rating on Spotify. Takes a couple seconds, right? Massively helps the show. And of course, as always, I'll drop my Instagram link in the show notes. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And I would consider recording a whole episode based off of your questions too. I'll talk to you in the next one.